أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله بارئ الخلائق الأجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء حبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه. Video. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله بارئ الخلائق الأجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء حبيب قلوبنا وشفيع ذنوبنا أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجه. ثم الصلاة والسلام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين لا سيما ولي الله الحجة ابن الحسن صاحب الأمر والزمان روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين آمين رب العالمين. أما بعد أحبائي, I'd like to begin first and foremost by congratulating each and every one of you upon the auspicious occasion of the birth of Maulana Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayh. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajjal farajah. And in honor of Imam al-Ridha alayhi salam, tonight, inshallah, I would like to take some time to discuss with you one of the debates, or a part of one of the debates that Imam Ridha alayhi salam had in the way of establishing Tawheed. And the reference point for today's discussion is Kitabul Ihtijaj by Alama Tabarsi Rahmatullah alayh, Volume 2, the second hadith under the chapter, the debates or the discussions of Imam Ali ibn Musa al-Ridha salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayh. And inshallah, the goal for us is to understand the art of debate and the art of logic when it comes to establishing the existence and the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to the extent that is possible for our lecture tonight, and as well to pay attention to the intricate details that are hidden within the hadith or that are embedded within the hadith that give us an understanding of the mannerism in which Tawheed needs to be established from a theological and from a perspective of eloquence. If we go back towards the hadith and we have ta'liq in it, Kitab al-Ihtijaj. This is the second hadith narrated by وعن محمد بن عبد الله الخراساني خادم الرضا عليه السلام. Hadith al-Sharif is narrated by Muhammad bin Abdullah al-Khurasani. Who was Muhammad bin Abdullah al-Khurasani? Khadim al-Ridha. alayhi salam. The khadim, one of the servants within the household of Imam Ridha alayhi salam. So from this title, Khadim al-Ridha, we are able to understand the credibility, number one. Number two, the grand position of Muhammad ibn Abdullah al-Khurasani, who is the narrator of the tradition, the narrator of this debate. His credibility is one. Number two, his high status in regards to his taqwa and iman, because to reach a position of being a khadim within the house of the imam, such that you are within the house of the imam and are honored to serve him, a person must have established a certain level of taqwa, iman, yaqeen, and loyalty towards Ahlul Bayt. For being from amongst the people who are in close proximity to Imam Ridha by virtue of this servitude, he narrates this hadith. دخل رجل من الزنادقة على الرضا عليه السلام وعنده جماعة. He says that a person from amongst the Zanadika, Zanadika plural for Zindiq. Zindiq, yani an atheist. He says, a person from amongst the atheists came into the house of Imam Ridha alayhi salam while he was seated with a number of people. Yani wa indahu jama'ah. A number of people had come to visit Imam Ridha. As you may already know from books within history, that the A'imma used to have certain times or multiple times during the day where the house would be open for all visitors, for all guests, for all people to come visit the Imam, perhaps ask their questions, ask for hajats, so on and so forth. So this was one of those occasions where there are people gathered within the house of Imam Ridha alayhi salam. The Khadim Muhammad ibn Abdullah al-Khurasani says that at this point, a person from amongst the atheists walked into the house of the Imam. Now, fiqh al-hadith, to contemplate and to understand the context of the hadith, is where the real art comes into place, and it allows us to understand the situation and the environment at the time of Imam Ridha alayhi salam. Muhammad ibn Abdullah al-Khurasani says a person from amongst the atheists came into the house of Imam Ridha. What does this denote? Straight away from this opening line of the hadith, we are able to understand that atheism as a belief was widespread within the Muslim lands under the time of Bani Abbas. Yani notice what this Khadim, servant of Imam Ridha alayhi salam, says, a man from amongst the atheists. Yani, meaning what? Not only was that man, whose name is not mentioned within the hadith, not only was that man a well-known personality such that the Khadim of Imam Ridha alayhi salam recognizes him, but in addition to this, he says, Mina Zanadika, that he was from amongst the atheists, meaning that not only was the person in himself a well-known individual within the city, but a person who propagated his faith, his disbelief, I should say, in Allah and in a creator openly. Now, whether this incident took place in the city of Ray or at when the Imam Ridha alayhi salam was forcibly moved towards the land of Mashhad, towards the Ray, land of Ray, or was it during the time when he was in Medina? This is not made clear. But regardless, what we are able to understand, whether it was in Ray or whether it was in the city of Medina al-Munawwara, atheism in the sense that this belief of the Creator and this belief of Allah was a widespread belief within the Muslim lands. And this shows you the circumstances and the environment in which Imam Ridha alayhi salam was executing his duty of divine imamah. It is important over here for a person to ask, how is it that within the Muslim lands, just about 200 years upon the martyrdom of Rasulullah, that the blessed lands under the Khilafah of Bani Abbas, the ideological state of the people has gotten to such a state that there is open negation of the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This, ahibai, from one sense, is a direct consequence of removing Ali Muhammad from the position of Khilafah. Why? Because when a Muslim government that claims to be the government of Allah Azza wa Jal commit every sort of atrocity and perform dhulm in the name of religion and in the name of Allah Azza wa Jal, one direct consequence is that people abandon the faith altogether. They may not abandon the faith because the principal beliefs don't make sense, but the execution of the actions of a government that claims to be Islamic or Muslim pushes the people away from the deen. Which is why, and I believe we may have mentioned this earlier, either in some of these series or on majalis in the past, that you find one of the greatest trends that had picked up within the last 15, 18 years was the rise of the ex-Muslims. Ex-Muslims, yani minu, people who have denoted their faith, people who have come away from their faith, people who have given up their faith or abandoned their belief as Muslims and have now turned either to other faiths or towards atheism. And when you look into their biographies, and you find some of them have perhaps one of the most famous books, yani books that are bestsellers, are perhaps from this category. In any case, you come and you find that if you were to read a majority of these people's writings and you were to read through their biographies to see what made them abandon the religion of Islam and embrace atheism, you would see that a big part of this reasoning was that the governments in which, the countries in which they lived, governed by authorities, leadership that claimed or used Islam as the guise to oppose the people underneath them. Hi Wahid. On the other hand, which again is a direct consequence of removing Ahl al-Bayt from the position of rulership and Khilafah, this divine authority granted upon them, is that when people are faced with questions about their faith, and on the other hand, the so-called divinely appointed Khalifa or Imam does not have satisfactory answers. A. Number two, provides you with incorrect answers. Then the natural result is that people, due to their jahl and their inability to have their questions answered, turn away from the faith altogether. This is where the waswasa of shaitan creeps in, which is why you find that Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, over and over, you will find within their ziyarat, we go forward and we confirm and reaffirm the statement that the Imam is aibatu ilmih. The Imam is the vessel of the knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you look throughout history, even after Saqifa, you have one of the so-called Khulafa, who Aslan didn't even know the rules of tayammum, such that if a person was to be considered or a person entered in a state of najasa and no water was available, they went to the Khalifa and they said, what should a person do in this case? He said, La som wa la siyam. No, you don't have to. La salat, afwan. The issue was about salat. He said, a person is exempted from praying if he's in a state of najas and doesn't find water. Hada ahkam from the khulafa. Khulafa minu? Khalifa of Allah Azza wa Jal. No. You find people not only begin to go astray through this, but because of this jahal that builds up, this misguidance that builds up, people abandon the faith altogether. We come back to our narration. He says, that a person from the Zanadika, from the atheists, entered into the house of Imam Rida while he was with guests. فقال له أبو الحسن يعني Imam Rida alayhi salam straight away initiated the conversation. Imam Rida alayhi salam, yani Abu al-Hasan Imam Rida alayhi salam said, أرأيت إن كان القول قولكم وليس هو كما تقولون ألسنا وإياكم شرعا سواء ولا يضرنا ما صلينا وصمنا وزكينا وأكررنا فسكت. فقال أبو الحسن عليه السلام وإن لم يكن القول قولنا وهو كما نقول ألستم قد حلقتم ونجونا. The Imam straight away begins the conversation with this atheist. Opening statement is from the Imam. What did the Imam say to him? أرأيت إن كان القول قولكم وليس هو كما تقولون ألسنا وإياكم شرعا سواء ولا يضرنا ما صلينا وصمنا وزكينا وأكررنا. He says to the atheist straight away, opening statement. Do you not think that on the assumption that your belief is correct? Yani the Imam is saying to the atheist, on the assumption that your belief is correct, because the atheist doesn't believe in the existence of Allah, the atheist doesn't believe in the resurrection after death, the atheist doesn't believe in judgment and consequences for actions between reward and punishment, hellfire and paradise. The atheist doesn't believe in this. You live and you live once, and after that, salam alaikum. The story is finished. So look at how Imam Rida alayhi salam initiates an opening statement and formulates the argument consequently. He says to the atheist, based upon your belief, does that not mean, or based upon your belief, it means that us, the believers, yani people who believe in the existence of Allah, people who believe in the resurrection after death, people who believe in Jannah and Jahannam. So he says to the atheist, based upon your belief that there is no heaven, there is no hell, you the atheist, and us the believers are the same. Ajib. How? He says, because on the assumption that you the atheist are correct, say you are correct, you lived your life how you wanted to live it, and you die and nothing's going to happen after that. And in the same way, according to your belief, even though we spend our lives praying and fasting and obeying Allah and giving zakat and giving religious charity and alms and dues, even if we did all of that, at the end of the day or at the end of our lives, when we die, nothing happens, nothing happens. At the end, you as a disbeliever and us as believers, according to your belief, we will still be in the same place. So whether you pray or you don't pray is the same thing. And even if we pray, it shouldn't matter to you, because at the end of the day, none of us will lose anything. End of life, nothing counted. So you lived how you lived and we lived how we lived. It says we are on the same boat in this sense. Hadith goes on to say, fasakat. Atheist kept quiet. He said, true. Why am I wasting my time convincing people to not believe in God, whether they believe or they don't believe? Even if they pray, they don't pray, the natija, the end result is going to be the same. Faqala Abu al-Hasan alayhi salam, so Imam Rida alayhi salam said to him, wa illam yakun al-qawl qawluna wa huwa kama naqul alastum kad halaktum wa najawna. And he says to the atheist, second part of the argument, on the assumption, on the basis that what we as believers say is true, and you as believers turn out to be untrue, does it not mean that we will gain eternal success whilst you will be a loser and you will be in hellfire? So the basis of the argument over here is what? The basis of the argument is that Imam Ridha is saying to the atheist, there are two possibilities over here. There is the possibility on the sense, so there are two paths. There is the path that Allah exists and there is hellfire and there is paradise at the end of this life. On the other hand, there is your belief, the atheist belief, in which there is no God and there is no hereafter. So, on the basis of your belief, on your basis that there is no hereafter, both the believer and the non-believer, the end result is the same. But when it comes to our belief, if it happens to be that our belief is true, we are victorious while you are not. So it says either way, us as the believers, whether what you are claiming is to be the reality or not, and whether we claim what we believe in is reality or not, either way, having a faith system, we are safe. But as an atheist, if you happen to be wrong and the other possibility happens to be correct, you are a loser. We have a system, whether the conclusion and the results, whether hereafter exists or not, we as believers were safe. But law, because if the opposite happens, you're going to end up in hellfire. Notice over here the art of the argument, which is used by Imam Ridha alayhi salam. The Imam over here, number one, he uses or he constructs a hypothetical argument governed by a 50-50 mathematical probability in order to establish the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Imam constructs a hypothetical argument in which the mathematical probability of each argument being correct is 50-50, and then used this against the atheist. The result of this is what? The atheist sees, this makes sense. You know what? Truly, if there is no hereafter, these Muslims, they will not lose out on anything. Their prayers and their fasting and this or that doesn't matter. But if the other, and nothing will happen to me either. We are on the same plane. But if there happens to be the ultimate reality that hereafter does exist, hell and heaven does exist, then much as these guys are safe, no, we're not safe. The option of believing or taking the route of believing in a God in hereafter gives them salvation in both circumstances. Whereas for myself, I do not have salvation in both cases. I have salvation only in one option. What is the most logical thing to do? The Imam over here appeals to the human instinct of inclining towards safety, on the assumption that there are two paths that can take you towards safety, or two paths that can lead towards a single destination. The human being is always inclined to choose the path which guarantees him the most safety. And based on this, the atheist sat back and look at what he responds and what he says to the Imam. He says to the Imam and he says to him, فقال الزنديق رحمك الله فأوجدني كيف هو وأين هو. May Allah have mercy upon you. May the Creator have mercy upon you. فأوجدني, for tell me, explain to me, كيف هو وأين هو. How is Allah and where is Allah? Look at the question that is asked by this atheist. Follow-up question. Now that this issue of choosing the most safest path for the afterlife is established, the Imam has now instigated the curiosity of the atheist in terms of finding out the particularities of this creator. So the atheist goes straight away and he says, show me, tell me, where is Allah and how is Allah? فَأَيْنَ هُوَ. Aina in Arabic, loosely translated as where. كَيْفَ هُوَ. كَيْفَ يعني for how. The loose translation for كَيْفَ, how. So where is Allah and how is Allah? كَيْفَ and the أَيْنَ. When you come back to language, be it Arabic language for the original kaifa and the aina, or if you go back to the translation within the English language, the word where and the word how. Both of these words are in language, are particles that denote dimensions constrained within the parameter of time and space. Again, where and how. These are two particles within the language, whether it is Arabic or English. There are two particles within language that denote dimensions that are constrained within the parameters of time and space. When you say where is somebody, where yani this person, the whereabouts, the place of this person, the space that this person occupies, identify this space for me. Therefore the particle where is a depiction or is denotes parameters of time and space. And the same thing with how. Yani, how is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? In terms of existence, the word how over here, again, how big is he? How small is he? How wide is he? How tall is he? How short he is? This word how captures dimensions that are within the parameters of space and time. So he asks, كيف هو وأين هو؟ قال ويلك. Imam Ridha alayhi salam says, woe be upon you. إن الذي ذهبت إليه غلط. Woe be upon you. The question that you have asked in itself is incorrect. Many times, ya ahibba'i, when it comes to theology, when it comes to understanding the reality of life and death, questions about creation, questions about tawheed and so on and so forth, it's not that the answers don't exist. It's that the question in itself is invalid and incorrect. The Imam says to him, your question is incorrect. وهو أين الأين وكان ولا أين وهو كيف الكيف وكان ولا كيف. Says to him, your question is incorrect. Why? As we stated, how and where are particles within language that denote the parameters or the constraints of time or space. The Imam goes on to say, Allah is Azza wa Jal, is the creator of time and space. The existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala precedes the existence of time and existence of space. For the creator who transcends time and space cannot be captivated by those two elements which he transcends to begin with. He's greater than them. Shunu greater than them. He is the creator of time and space. For the Imam now begins to lay the foundation for how the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is to be understood. He says, وَلَا يُعْرَفْ بِكَيْفُوفِيَّةٍ وَلَا بِعَيْنُونِيَّةٍ وَلَا يُدْرَكْ بِحَاسَةٍ وَلَا يُقَاسْ بِشَيْءٍ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cannot be understood through dimensions of space or time. Yani كيف وأين. وَلَا يُدْرَكْ بِحَاسَةٍ. Allah Azza wa Jal cannot be comprehended by the five physical senses. Yani the touch, the smell, the taste, so on and so forth. وَلَا يُقَاسْ بِشَيْءٍ. And he cannot be compared to anything. La yuqas bishay. He cannot be compared to anything, which is why we have in Kitab al-Kafi, if my memory serves me right, hadith by Imam Ja'far ibn Muhammad as-Sadiq salawatullahi wa salamuhu alayh, where he explains the meaning of the takbir, Allahu Akbar. The Imam, Ma'soom Imam, asked one of the companions, or one of the companions asked the Imam asked one of the companions, Ma'soom Imam asked one of the companions, what is the meaning of Allahu Akbar? He said, Allah is greater than everything. He says, this is shirk. Ajib. He says, Allah is greater than everything. Imam said, Lord, this is shirk. So how can it be shirk? I'm attesting that he is greater than everything. The Imam says, the fact that you compared Allah to everything else and you said Allah is greater than everything, the fact that you put everything in a place where you think that now you can say Allah is greater than all of that, the fact that you even made that comparison of everything with Allah, that in itself is shirk. The beginning, iftitahu salat, the beginning of salat. Many times even, you see, even within, Shia publications, unfortunately, sometimes you find the translation of Allahu Akbar, Allah is greater than everything. No, Imam says this is shirk. He's greater than can be comprehended. Allahu Akbar, Allah is greater. Greater than what? Greater than anything, everything, whatever that comes to mind. Allah is greater than to be comprehended. Ma'arif. Yani truth in regards to ideology, mukhif, brings fear. The Abbas's understanding of Allahu Akbar, which we claim to be one of the basic tenets of faith, the opening acts of Salah has been incorrect. 40, 50, 60 years, person's been doing shirk. It's important. Wala yuqas bi shay. It cannot be compared to anything. You find that understanding this phrase, la yuqas bi shay, is one of the fundamentals of Tawheed, especially when you are taking Tawheed from the madrasa of Ahlul Bayt, because you find a lot of those who went into the realm of philosophy and into the realm of irfan, which was not warranted by Ahlul Bayt, are guilty of committing some of the most atrocious forms of shirk. You look at some of these theories of wujud of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that come in. And I remember finding this in one of these texts that call themselves Shia texts. They say understanding the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in relationship to the existence of the human being. You want to understand this relationship is like the relationship of the water of the ocean and the waves. The water and the waves. For the water is one large mass of body, but the waves are a consequence of the movement of that body. And in the same way, the existence of Allah and the existence of the creation, one theory of wujud, shirk in its core. La yuqas bi shay. Allah cannot be compared to anything. Aslan, the existence of the entire creation, makhluk, khalq, cannot be compared, is nothing in comparison to the existence of the Khaliq. Laysa kamithlihi shay. There is nothing like him. These are the bases of our faith, which if it is not corrected, everything after that, salat, Saum, Hajj, Zakat, has no value. Because the Lord that we claim to pray to in our salat, the wrong Lord, Lord that we don't even believe. Perhaps a person is praying to a different Lord altogether. Wala yuqas bi shay. The person goes on to say, qala ar-rajul فإذا إنه لا شيء إذا لم يدرك بحاسة من حواس. The rebuttal of the atheist, He says to Imam Ridha, well, if that's the case, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not exist. His argument being what? He says, if Allah Azza wa Jal cannot be captured by the five physical senses, he does not exist. Yani, any reality, any truth, any concept that cannot be comprehended through the five senses does not exist. This, by the way, is the basis of materialism. Hence the word materialistic. Person goes for what is restricted to the senses. The reply of the Imam, وَيْلَكْ لَمَّا عَجِزَتْ حَوَاسَكَ عَنْ إِدْرَاكِهِ أَنْكَرْتَ رُبُوبِيَّتَهِ. He says, when your senses fail to recognize Allah, you reject Allah. But for us, when we understand that our senses are limited and cannot grasp the reality, or no one can grasp the reality of Allah, but cannot grasp the understanding of Allah, at this point, our inability to grasp the existence of Allah gives us more yaqeen in the grandeur of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is something very important, even when it comes to Sharia. Doesn't mean because we can't understand the wisdom behind the hadith that we negate the hadith altogether. The same thing, the root starts from here. Just because people are not able to physically see Allah, physically come to the conclusion of seeing Allah, they reject Allah. Same thing. The Imam goes on to say, so the Imam replies to him that when the senses are limited, we begin to understand the grandeur of Allah, how our yaqeen increases. For he goes on to say, for how would you deduce the existence of a creator? And from here the hadith goes on, based on what's mentioned over here in Kitabul Ihtijaj. The debate goes on for quite some time, in which there is quite a bit of detail. Hatman, definitely, if any of you get the opportunity to follow Kitabul Ihtijaj, you can read through the rest of the debate. But over here, kalam is what? The Imam leads the person towards contemplating over the creation of his body, number one, and number two, the creation of the earth and the universe. Pondering over the creation of the trees and the sun and the moon and the earth in general, contemplating on the perfection of the creation within the human body, will ultimately lead you to the conclusion that this system of perfection that surrounds us, the system of perfection within the human body, is an indicator that there is a master architect without doubt, and that architect is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Cannot have a system in which there is no Allah Azza wa Jal. Go through the debate in its entirety within Kitabul Ihtijaj. Over here, Ahibbai, it is important to say one thing. Contemplation within the creation and contemplation upon the body is important in terms of establishing Tawheed, and this, you notice, is a means of debate and the means of logical establishment of a creator shown to us by Imam Ridha alayhi salam, such that even in today's context, when you come and you see today's day and age, particularly you find a lot of the shabab, not only the shabab, but even the elderly people, they are plagued by these questions that come in, where researchers, scholars, thinkers, scientists, people from all calibers and all different levels of society within different professions and different fields come back and they argue the existence of God and the existence of this earth. where a person would come back to you and would say, well, if you're going to talk about the perfection of this creation being a proof to the existence of God, this proof is not foolproof. How? It says, because this earth was created, the universe in essence was created through a Big Bang, through the Big Bang theory, and the Big Bang theory is put forward as the creation of earth. Tayyib, for us, our Shabab, how do we answer questions like this? How do we come back to this? Using the same strategy and to outline the same outline of the debate used by Imam Ridha alayhi salam over here. Thinking over the perfection of the creation within the universe and within the body. They say that this universe was created through a Big Bang, the Big Bang theory. The first question to ask is, was this massive explosion that took place, was it an explosion that was a random explosion, or was it a controlled explosion? This is the first question to ask. If we fall on the assumption, or we subscribe to the assumption that the explosion was a random explosion, then the subsequent question is, what is the mathematical probability that a random explosion could result in perfection of an entire universe in its entirety, in every detail, which is minor and major, for its existence to be perfect? Yani, what is the mathematical possibility of a random occurrence leading to multiple, numerous acts of perfection? Put a mathematical probability towards it. For context, yani a random explosion. What is the percentage of oxygen within the air? If this percentage of oxygen was to go up by 1% or down by 1%, what is the impact it would have on human life? Say the percentage of oxygen which is in its perfect proportion as a necessary condition for man to breathe and to exist. The fact that it happened by a random explosion, what is the possibility this percentage would have reached at a perfect level for human existence? In addition to that, put down the possibility, the distance or the probability of the distance of the sun from the earth. If the sun was a few kilometers closer to earth, existence on earth would not be possible. And similarly, if the sun was to be a few kilometers further than where it is, the world would be too cold to inhabit. So again, what is the possibility of a random explosion causing the sun to be in its optimal position for human life to exist? And so on and so forth. Put this possibility for water. Put this possibility for the moon and for numerous other things that you see in existence. You find that to believe that a random occurrence can lead to multiple effects which denote perfection on its own is a mathematical impossibility. Hi, Wahid. This is on the belief, or this is on the assumption, if we say that the random was, or the explosion was random. Sometimes you have law, a person comes and says, yeah, the explosion wasn't random, it was a controlled explosion. Tayyib, if it was a controlled explosion, who controlled this explosion? If they come and they say this was the force of Mother Nature, Tayyib, who created Mother Nature? Where did Mother Nature come from? Where is the root cause of every human cause explained behind science? Science will come and give you the cause behind every cause to what is humanly possible. Our question is a step beyond science, not conflicting science. The creator of the rules of science. Who is the reason, or what is the cause behind the root cause? This is what leads you towards absolute yaqeen in the existence of Allah Azza wa Jal. You find questions in theology of this sort and questions of Tawheed. It is important that us, as the lovers of Ahlul Bayt and Shi'as of Ali Muhammad, that we delve into these studies to the best of our ability, not only to strengthen our faith and the faith of our children in times that are as turbulent as these, but in order for us to shed light of Ahlul Bayt and the light of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to those who are amongst us. Ahibai, to end tonight's majlis, I would like to grant you a hadiyah, which is a Radawi hadiyah from the gems and the treasures of Imam Ridha alayhi salam, Babul Hawaij. May Allah Azza wa Jal grant each and every one of us the opportunity to perform the ziyarah of Imam Ridha alayhi salam in the dunya and to gain his shafa'ah in the akhirah. Hadiyah from Imam Ridha alayhi salam, a gift from the treasures of Imam Ridha for you on this day of the wilad of Imam Ridha alayhi salam. And through this gift of Imam Ridha, it brings for you abundant happiness in the dunya, as well as abundant happiness for your marhumin and marhumat. Hadith al-Sharif, which is narrated in Bihar al-Anwar, on the authority of Imam Ridha alayhi salam. Man zara qabra mu'minin fakara'a indahu inna anzalna sab'a marrat غفر الله له ولصاحب القبر. Imam Ridha alayhi salam says, whoever visits the grave of another mu'min and recites on that grave Inna Anzalna Suratul Qadr 7 times, غفر الله له ولصاحب القبر, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives the one who has recited the Suratul Qadr, as well he forgives the sins of the person who is buried inside that grave. Enter when you go to a graveyard. And ahibai, try and make this a practice within your lifestyles. Be it on a daily basis for those who can, on a weekly basis, bi-weekly basis, monthly basis. Make it within the lifestyle to visit the marhumin and the marhumat, to visit the graveyards. Imam Ridha alayhi salam says, you go to the graveyard, 7 times you recite Suratul Qadr. Ghafarallahu lah. If you look into the hadith says, Ghafarallahu lah, yani Ghufran, forgiveness from Allah mutlakan. The person, when he goes to the graveyard and recites Suratul Qadr 7 times, should have that yaqeen and that imam that the forgiveness of his sins, he comes out of that graveyard like a newborn baby without any sin. وَلِصَاحِبِ الْقَبْرِ, forgiveness for the deceased. Allah in the rights of the deceased. Allah on the state of the deceased in Alam al-Barzakh. The human mind cannot imagine the relief and the happiness that the deceased get when their graves are visited and Suratul Fatiha or the Quran is recited for them. Nobody knows. If there is no sin for the one who is buried, then the Suratul Qadr is an elevation in their status. And who doesn't want perfection? Fa ahibba'i, hadith from Imam Ridha alayhi salam, visitation of the graveyards, reciting Suratul Qadr over the grave of a mu'min 7 times, results in the forgiveness of all sins of the deceased, as well as the person who recites the Suratul Qadr. With this, we end our majlis for tonight, and we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Mu'mineen and mu'minat who are not in the best of health, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them shafa'ah by the sake of Imam Ridha alayhi salam. By the sake of Imam Ridha, Ya Allah, on this auspicious occasion of the birth of Imam Ridha alayhi salam, forgive us our sins and make us to be deserving of the shafa'ah of Imam Rida alayhi salam, the intercession of Imam Rida alayhi salam on the day of judgment. Grant us the opportunity to perform the ziyarah of Imam Rida alayhi salam in the dunya. Ya Allah, by the sake of Imam Rida alayhi salam, help us to serve the deen and to uphold the majalis aza of Imam al-Hussein. For indeed, these were one of the things that were most beloved to Imam Rida alayhi salam. By the sake of Imam Rida, Ya Allah, hasten the reappearance of Mawlana Sahib al-Amri wa Zaman. Help us to be from amongst his companions, from amongst his ashab and his ansar. وآخر الدعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. يقول الله تعالى في كتابه الحكيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجا. سورة الفاتحة for all our مرحومين and مرحومات.